I should have kept my mouth shut. That's what any smart person would have done. Smile, pour the wine, pretend I didn't understand a word of the Sicilian rolling off the man's tongue like gravel down a hillside. But I've never been smart about the things that matter. Ask my brother, ask my landlord, ask anyone who's watched me choose pride over survival. It was a Friday night, the kind that turns the trattoria into a pressure cooker. Every table full, kitchen tickets bleeding onto the floor, my feet screaming inside shoes, held together with hope and superglue. I'd been doubling shifts all week because Rosa called in sick and Tony refused to hire temporary help. You want the hours or not, Eva? Like it was a favor instead of exploitation. I was balancing 4 plates of pasta alla norma when I passed table 7. The man sitting there wasn't loud like the others. That should have been my first warning. In a neighborhood where everyone talks with their whole body, silence is a tell. He wore his suit like it was tailored to him in another life. Expensive once, worn enough now to blend. Dark hair, darker eyes, the kind of face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so carefully blank. He was drinking red wine alone. Watching, I set the plates down at table 9, smiled at the Barones, deflected Signora Barone's usual complaint about the portion size, and turned back toward the kitchen. That's when I heard it. Low, almost lazy, in a Sicilian dialect my nonna used to speak when she didn't want the neighbors understanding. Agata randagia pensa chi è luna. The stray cat thinks she's a lion. My hand tightened on the empty tray. Every instinct I'd honed over 3 years of navigating this neighborhood screamed at me to keep walking. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking about me to whoever was listening or to no one at all. It didn't matter, except it did. Because I'd spent 26 years being underestimated, talked over, talked around, reduced to scenery in my own life. And maybe it was the double shifts, or the eviction notice folded in my apron pocket, or the fact that I'd skipped lunch again to save $5, but something in me snapped clean. I turned, walked straight to table 7, set the tray down with just enough force to make the wine glass tremble, and answered him in the same dialect, steady and clear. I luna un s'annunzano Sant'Angelo. Lions don't announce themselves Sant'Angelo. The restaurant didn't go silent. That only happens in movies. But the air changed. Like someone had cracked a window in a sealed room. The man's eyes locked on mine, not angry. Worse, interested. And that's when I realized 3 things in rapid succession. 1. I'd just responded in a dialect most people under 50 didn't speak anymore. 2. I'd called him by a name, Sant'Angelo. That clearly meant something, because the 2 men at table 4 stopped eating mid-bite. 3. I'd made a mistake I couldn't take back. Table 4 scraped their chairs back in unison. The man, Marco, I'd learn later, though Sant'Angelo was apparently closer to the truth, didn't move. He just watched me with those dark eyes, and I watched the muscle tick in his jaw, once, like he was biting down on something that wanted out. Ava. Tony's voice from the kitchen doorway, tight with warning. Step back. I didn't. Couldn't, maybe. My feet had grown roots. My heart was doing something arrhythmic behind my ribs, but my chin stayed up, my shoulders back, because I'd already jumped. Might as well find out how far the fall goes. One of the men from table 4, thick neck, scar through his eyebrow, pointed at Marco. You bring business here, Sant'Angelo. Under Vito's nose? Marco's voice, when he finally spoke, was quieter than I expected. American accented English, the Sicilian completely gone. I brought dinner, she brought the conversation. She brought your name. Scarborough took a step closer. Funny how nobody knew you were back until the waitress starts running her mouth. I started. But Marco stood. And the movement cut me off more effectively than words. He was tall, and he took up space like he'd been trained to. Shoulders that suggested violence even when he was standing still. Hands loose at his sides, but I caught the scarring on his knuckles. Old damage. Repeated damage. She didn't know, Marco said, still quiet. Leave it. Can't leave it. Scarborough's companion, younger, meaner smile, cracked his neck. Vito hears you're eating here, using names? He's gonna think you're sloppy. Or stupid. Either way, we gotta ask some questions. He looked at me when he said it. Tony moved fast for a man his age, putting himself between me and the dining room. Not in my restaurant. You want trouble? Take it outside. We want the girl, Scarborough again. 5 minutes. She tells us what she knows. We're done. My stomach dropped. I'd waitressed long enough to know what 5 minutes meant in this neighborhood. People went out back for 5 minutes and came back different. Or didn't come back at all. Marco's hand flexed once. No. Just that. One word. Flat as a blade. The younger one grinned. You gonna stop us, San Angelo? In a restaurant full of civilians? That's not your style. Try me. And then everything happened too fast. Scarborough lunged. Not at Marco, at me. Tony tried to block him and caught an elbow to the temple that sent him sideways into the host stand. I stumbled back, tray clattering, and my hip hit the edge of table 7 hard enough to bruise. Marco moved. No, that's not right. Marco was already there, hand locking around Scarborough's wrist, torque and angle, and something that made the bigger man's knees buckle. The younger one came in from the side, and Marco used Scarborough's body as a fulcrum, swinging him around, releasing him at exactly the right moment to send them both crashing into table 9. The Barones screamed. Plates shattered. Someone yelled for the police. I should have run. Should have gotten behind the bar, or into the kitchen, or anywhere that wasn't within grabbing distance of 3 men who clearly knew how to hurt people. Instead, I grabbed the ladle off the nearest station, cast iron, heavy enough to do damage. And when the younger one shoved past Marco toward me, I swung it straight into his reaching hand. Bone cracked. He howled, reeling back. Marco caught him by the collar, spun him, and slammed him face first into the bar. Not hard enough to break anything, just hard enough to stop him. Scarborough was up again. Bleeding from his lip, murder in his eyes. He grabbed a chair, and Marco caught my wrist. Kitchen, now, I moved. Not because he told me to, but because my instincts finally woke up and started screaming. We crashed through the kitchen doors together. Marco kicked them shut behind us, grabbed the mop handle, and jammed it through the push-bar handles, a lock that would buy us maybe 30 seconds. Back exit, he said. Not asking. I pointed. My hand was shaking. The ladle was still in my other fist. The doors shuttered, impact from the other side. Voices shouting, Tony trying to de-escalate and failing. Marco looked at me. Really looked, for the first time. Taking inventory, my death grip on the ladle, my torn apron. The way my pulse was hammering in my throat. You know how to run in those? He nodded at my shoes. I know how to survive. Something shifted in his expression. Not a smile, but close. Good, stay behind me. When I say move, you move. Understand? I should have told him to go to hell. Should have demanded explanations, or called the real police, or at least asked what the fuck I'd just stepped into. But the doors shuttered again, and the mop handle was starting to crack, and Marco's hand was extended toward me, scarred knuckles, steady palm, the kind of certainty that comes from making hard choices in tight spaces. I dropped the ladle, took his hand, and ran. We burst out the other side into a cross alley I didn't recognize. Marco pulled me right, then immediately into a recessed doorway, closed dry cleaner, metal gate pulled down. He pressed me back against it, his body blocking the entrance to our hiding spot. One hand flat against the brick beside my head. Close, too close. The reality of him hit me all at once. The smell of leather and clean sweat, the heat radiating off his chest despite the cool night air. He was breathing hard, controlled but audible, and I could feel each exhale ghost across my temple, stirring the hair that had come loose from my ponytail. My own breathing was ragged, uneven. My heart doing something arrhythmic that had nothing to do with the running and everything to do with the 6 feet of contained violence, currently using his body as my shield. He was listening, head tilted slightly, all his attention on the sounds of pursuit. But I was trapped between the cold metal at my back and the heat of him in front, and my brain was frantically cataloging details it had no business noticing. The way his forearm, braced beside my head, showed a scatter of old scars through dark hair, the flex of muscle in his jaw as he tracked sounds I couldn't hear, the fact that he'd positioned himself so carefully that we weren't quite touching, a breath of space between us, deliberate, controlled. But I could feel the potential of contact like static electricity before a storm. When did you learn Sicilian? His voice was barely a murmur, pitched low enough that it vibrated somewhere in my chest. My nonna, she raised me. I had to work to keep my voice steady. She left in 62, married a nobody from Brooklyn, died mad about it. His mouth twitched, almost a smile, and God help me, I watched it happen. Watched the corner of his lips curve. Watched the way it softened the hard lines of his face for just a second. And Sant'Angelo? My brain was short-circuiting. I heard someone say it once, about a family from the old country. I didn't know it was you. He finally looked at me, this close. His eyes weren't just dark, they were brown, flecked with amber under the sodium lights, and the full weight of his focus hit me like a physical thing. He was seeing me, not cataloging, not assessing, seeing. I watched his gaze drop, just for a second, to my mouth, then back up. The air between us thickened. You should have kept quiet, he said, and his voice had gone rough around the edges. In the restaurant, should have let it slide. I don't do that. My pulse was hammering in my throat. I wondered if he could see it. I don't make myself small for men who think I'm invisible. Something flashed in his eyes. Heat, maybe, or recognition. I noticed. His hand shifted on the brick, not closer, but the movement drew my attention to the breadth of his shoulders, the way he filled the space without crowding. You're not invisible, Eva. That's the problem. The way he said my name, low, deliberate, like he was tasting it, did something to my breathing. Footsteps echoed closer. Voices. Check the side streets. Marco's other hand came up, lightning fast, and pressed gently over my mouth. Not restraining, warning. His palm was warm, calloused. I could smell something on his skin, soap maybe, or just the salt-sweat reality of him. Our eyes locked. I stopped breathing entirely. He was close enough now that I could feel the rise and fall of his chest, see the pulse beating in his throat, count the individual scars that mapped a history of violence across his knuckles. The footsteps passed, faded, gone. Marco's hand dropped from my mouth slowly, like he was giving me time to protest. His thumb, just for a second, brushed the corner of my bottom lip. Deliberate or accident, I couldn't tell. Didn't matter. Heat shot through me like a live wire. He stepped back, one careful inch, then another, and the cool air rushed in between us like a gasp. We need to move, he said. His voice was steady, but I caught the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand flexed once before he forced it to relax. He'd felt it too, whatever that was. I know. He said it simply, not absolution, just fact. But intention doesn't matter when you've put a name to a face in front of the Colanas. The who? The men who are at table 4, who are currently looking for you, he paused. Who will find you, Eva? Unless you make some smart choices in the next 5 minutes. My spine straightened against the metal gate. Don't threaten me. Not a threat. A prediction. He shifted slightly, giving me an inch more space, but still blocking the exit. The Colanas want leverage on me. You just became leverage. They'll come to your apartment, your work, anywhere you're predictable. They'll ask questions that sound polite until they're not. Then I'll tell them I don't know anything. You think they'll believe you? He shook his head. You spoke a dialect that marked you as connected. You used a name that's been buried for 15 years. From their perspective, you're either a plant or an asset. Either way, you're useful. My throat felt tight. So what am I supposed to do? Disappear? I have a job. A brother in school. Rent that's already late? I know, I blinked. You know what? Everything. You're Eva Russo, 26. You've worked at Ginelli's for 3 years. Your brother Matteo is 17, junior at St. Jerome's on a needs-based scholarship that's up for renewal. You live at 207 Hester, 4th floor walk-up, and your landlord filed an eviction notice last week. He said it like he was reading a grocery list. You're 4 months behind on rent. You work doubles because Rose has been out and Tony won't hire help. You skip meals to send money home to your aunt in Philly who has MS. You're exactly the kind of person who can't afford to become collateral damage. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the cold realization that this man, this stranger, knew the architecture of my life in detail. You had me investigated. I have everyone investigated. No apology in it. I eat at Gianelli's twice a month. You think I don't know who's serving my food? I didn't have a word for what it was. Invasive, calculated, terrifying in its thoroughness. That's insane. That's survival. His hand shifted on the brick, and I realized he was still listening, cataloging sounds, measuring distances. The insult in the restaurant? That wasn't random. I needed to confirm something. What? That there was a leak. Someone on staff feeding information to the Colanas. His jaw tightened. I knew it was happening. I didn't know who. So I baited the room, said something in dialect that only someone with the right connections would catch. And you walked right into it. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. You used me. Yes. At least he was honest. It didn't make me feel better. So congratulations, I said, bitterness coating every word. You confirmed your leak. What happens to me now? Do I just, disappear? Hope they forget. They won't forget. He said it gently, which was somehow worse. But I can keep you off their radar if you cooperate. Cooperate how? Come with me, tonight. Stay at a safe location for the weekend. Let me finish what I started. I laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. You want me to just go with you? A man I don't know, who just admitted he manipulated me, while people are hunting me because of your mess? Yes. He didn't flinch. Because the alternative is you go home and they're waiting. Or you go to the police and they can't protect you from what the Colanas will do before any arrest happens. Or you run, and your brother becomes the next angle they exploit. Mateo. God, Mateo with his perfect grades and his scholarship and his complete obliviousness to how hard I work to keep his life clean. You're cornering me. I'm offering a deal. Marco's voice dropped, and for the first time I heard something other than calculation in it. Something that might have been regret. I put you in this. I'll get you out. But I need you to trust me for 48 hours. Trust you? I almost laughed again. You just told me you investigate everyone and use people as bait. I did. And I'm telling you, I'll keep you safe. He straightened slightly, his full height suddenly obvious in the cramped space. 6 feet of controlled violence and unwanted certainty. No guns. No one touches you without consent. You keep your phone, your freedom to leave. I just need you where they can't get to you while I handle this. Handle it how? There's a union arbitration Monday. Port-adjacent contract. The Colanas want it rigged. I think your boss Tony is the leak. They're squeezing him over a gambling debt. He paused. I need someone who can listen, really listen, who understands the dialect and the subtext, and can tell me what's being said under what's being said. You need an interpreter. I need you. He said it like it was obvious, like I was the only possible answer to an equation I didn't understand yet. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the metal gate behind me, felt the cold bite through my uniform. If I say yes, what exactly am I agreeing to? A flat in Cobble Hill. 2 nights. You attend the arbitration as my guest. You tell me what you hear, he held my gaze. And I make sure the Colanas understand you're off limits, permanently. And my job? My brother? Tony will answer for the leak, but you'll keep your job. I'll make sure of it. Mateo stays clean. Scholarship gets renewed. His voice softened, just a fraction. I'm not a good man, Eva, but I keep my word, always. Footsteps, closer now. Someone calling out, check the side streets. And Marco's attention snapped back to the alley. We're out of time, he extended his hand again. Scarred knuckles, steady palm. Yes or no? I thought about my apartment, the eviction notice, Mateo's worried texts asking when I'd be home. The way Tony had looked at me earlier this week, when I'd asked about my missing hours, guilty, trapped, desperate. I thought about the Colanas and the way Scarborough had looked at me like I was something to be collected. I thought about Marco saying I put you in this like it was a debt he intended to pay. No guns, I said. No guns. No touching without consent. Agreed. I keep my job. And if you're lying about any of this, if this is some kind of, it's not. His hand stayed extended. 2 nights. Then you decide if you're in or out. Fair? Nothing about this was fair. But fair didn't keep you alive in this neighborhood. Smart did. And sometimes smart meant taking the hand of the devil you'd just met. Because the devils you hadn't met yet were already circling. I took his hand. Okay, I whispered. 2 nights. He pulled me out of the doorway and into the dark. The safe flat wasn't what I expected. I'd pictured something out of a movie: dark leather, expensive whiskey, maybe a wall of surveillance monitors. The kind of place a man with Marco's history would use as a fortress. Instead, I got hardwood floors, cream-colored walls, and a kitchen that looked like someone's grandmother had decorated it in 1987 and then stopped updating. Clean, but lived in. A coffee pot on the counter. Actual books on the shelves, spines cracked from reading. Bathrooms through there. Marco locked the door behind us, 3 separate locks, I noticed, and gestured down a short hallway. Bedroom's yours, I'll take the couch. I stood in the center of the living room, still holding my purse like a shield, and tried to process the last 40 minutes of my life. The restaurant, the chase. The deal I'd made with a man who'd just admitted to investigating me like I was a security risk. My phone buzzed. Matteo, you okay? Tony called. Said there was a fight. Shit. I typed back quickly. Fine. Staying at a friend's tonight. See you tomorrow. The lie tasted bitter, but the truth was impossible. You should eat. Marco was in the kitchen now, opening cabinets with the ease of someone who knew exactly where everything was. When's the last time you had a real meal? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. I watched him pull out bread, cheese, some kind of cured meat. Efficient movements, no wasted motion. He'd shed his jacket, the expensive worn one that had helped him blend at the restaurant, and I could see the way his shoulders filled out the white shirt underneath. No tie. Sleeves rolled to his forearms. Those scars on his knuckles weren't the only ones. I could see another along his left forearm, disappearing under the rolled fabric. Linear, deliberate. The kind you got from a blade, not an accident. Lunch, I said finally. Yesterday. He paused, knife hovering over the cheese, looked at me. Yesterday. I had coffee this morning. Coffee's not food. It's calories. It's battery acid with delusions. He went back to cutting, but his mouth had tightened. Sit. Eat. We'll talk after. I should have argued. Should have maintained some kind of dignity, some boundary that said I wasn't just going to follow orders from a man who'd upended my life. But my knees were shaking, and the adrenaline was draining out of me like water from a cracked glass. And suddenly the couch looked like the only solid thing in the world. I sat. Marco brought over a plate, cheese, meat, bread, some olives I hadn't seen him get, and set it on the coffee table in front of me. Then he disappeared back into the kitchen and returned with water. Actual water, in a real glass, cold enough that condensation was already forming. Eat, he said again. Not quite gentle, but not harsh either. Then we'll go over what happens next. I ate. I didn't mean to demolish the plate, but somewhere between the first bite and the last, my body reminded me that skipping meals to save money had consequences. The cheese was good, real Parmigiano, nutty and sharp. The meat was some kind of prosciutto that melted on my tongue. When I finally looked up, Marco was watching me. Not just watching, studying. Like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. He hadn't touched his own plate, just sat there in the armchair, elbows on his knees, completely focused on me. What? I said, suddenly self-conscious. I wiped my mouth. Do I have food on my face? No. His voice was quiet. I'm just trying to figure you out. What's to figure out? I'm a broke waitress who can't keep her mouth shut. You're a woman who speaks 3 dialects, reads rooms like a professional, and hit a man with a ladle without hesitating. His gaze was steady, intense. You're more than you pretend to be. The weight of his attention made my skin feel tight. I took a drink of water, needed something to do with my hands, some reason to break eye contact. But I felt him watching the movement, watched him watch the way my throat worked as I swallowed, the way I set the glass down carefully on the table. When I looked back, his jaw was tight. Why do you do that? I asked before I could stop myself. Do what? Look at me like... I trailed off. Couldn't finish the sentence because I didn't know how to name what I was seeing. Like what? He leaned forward slightly, and the lamplight caught the planes of his face. Sharp cheekbones, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. The scar that cut through his left eyebrow. God, he was devastating when he focused like that. Like you're trying to decide if I'm an asset or a problem, I said finally. His mouth curved, not quite a smile. What if you're both? The air shifted, got heavier. "Marco, you scare me," he said, and the honesty of it stopped my breath. "Not because you're weak, because you're not. And I need you to be careful tomorrow." I saw it in the set of his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into loose fists on his knees. He'd already decided I was his responsibility, his to protect. And the look in his eyes said it was becoming more than that. "I'll be careful," I whispered. He nodded, picked up his own plate but didn't eat, just held it like he'd forgotten what it was for. "The arbitration Monday," I started, because silence felt dangerous in ways I didn't want to examine. "What exactly am I listening for?" "Everything." He set the plate down again, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The position made him less imposing somehow, still tall, still built like violence, but contained, focused. "The Kalanas won a logistics contract that runs through the port. Legal on paper, but it gives them access to shipping schedules, warehouse inventories. Clean way to move things that shouldn't be moved. And you don't want them to have it. I don't want them to steal it. There's a difference." His jaw worked. "The contract should go to the union's pick. Fair vote, fair process. But they've been working the angles for weeks. Intimidation, bribes, planting rumors about the other candidates. So this is about what? Honor?" He smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "This is about power, control. The Kalanas take this contract. They gain leverage over 3 other families and half the legitimate businesses in a 6-block radius. People who can't afford to be caught in that web. People like Tony, like me. And the leak, Tony, how does he fit? Tony owes money, a lot of it. The kind you don't walk away from." Marco's expression darkened. They gave him a choice, feed them information, or they'd go after his daughter. She's at NYU, pre-med. He made the only choice he could. My stomach twisted. I thought about Tony, his tired eyes, the way he'd tried to step between me and the Kalanas tonight. You can't blame him for that. I don't, but I can't ignore it either. He met my eyes. The leak ends after Monday. Tony pays his debt through other means, gets clean, and I make sure his daughter stays untouchable. But the information pipeline, that closes. And you need me to what? Confirm what they're planning. The arbitration will be conducted partially in English, partially in Italian. But the real negotiations? Those happen in the margins. Side conversations, dialect, coded phrases. He paused. I need to know what's being said when they think I can't understand. And I need someone who can catch it in real time. Not a recording I analyze later. Why not hire a professional interpreter? Because professionals can be bought, or threatened, or compromised. His gaze held mine. You can't. You're already in it. And you have a reason to see this through. My survival, you mean? Your brother's safety, your job, your life continuing without a target on your back. He said it plainly, no sugarcoating. This isn't altruism, Eva. It's mutual benefit. I need your ears, you need my protection. We both get what we need, and the Kalanas lose. I should have been angry, should have raged at the transactional nature of it, the way he'd reduced my choices to a binary, but he wasn't wrong. Fine, I set the water glass down. So what happens between now and Monday? Do I just sit here, wait? No. Marco stood, walked to a drawer in the side table, and pulled out a file folder. Thin, maybe a dozen pages. You prepare. These are the key players, names, faces, backgrounds. Who's aligned with who owes what. The Kalanas will bring at least 3 people. You need to know them on site. He handed me the folder. I opened it. The first page was a photo, professional, like a driver's license or company ID, of Scarborough from the restaurant. Name underneath, Giancarlo Colonna. Enforcer. Nephew to Vincent. He's the one who tried to grab me. Yes, he'll be at the arbitration. So will his cousin, Enzo. Marco tapped the second photo. Younger, meaner smile, the one who'd come after me in the restaurant. Enzo does the talking. Giancarlo does the watching. But the real power is Vincent. Third photo. Older man, maybe 60. With silver hair and the kind of face that probably looked grandfatherly until you noticed the eyes. Cold. Calculating. Vincent Colonna runs the family. He's smart, too smart to get his hands dirty, but he'll be there. Observing, Marco's voice went flat. He's the one who'll try to leverage you if he gets the chance. If he approaches you, you walk away. Immediately. Don't engage, don't explain. Just remove yourself. And if he doesn't let me, then you make noise. Loud, public, impossible to ignore noise. Marco's hand flexed. But it won't come to that. I'll be there. I looked at the photos, trying to memorize faces I never wanted to see again. What about you? What's your role in all this? Officially, I'm a consultant. Business logistics, supply chain optimization. Boring enough that no one asked questions. He pulled out another chair, sat backward on it, arms crossed over the top. Unofficially, I'm the reason the Colanas can't just bulldoze their way to what they want. I represent interests that prefer balance. You're a fixer. I prefer mediator. That almost smile again. But yes, I fix things. Keep territories from bleeding into each other. Make sure disagreements don't become wars. Without guns. His expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, or respect. You noticed. Kind of hard to miss. You fought two men in a restaurant and didn't pull a weapon. I don't carry. He said it simply. Haven't in 3 years. Turns out you can accomplish a lot more with leverage and patience than you can with a bullet. Why? The question hung between us. Marco looked away, jaw working. And for a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Because I got tired of the funerals, he said finally. Quiet. Tired of cleaning up messes that started because someone decided bullets solved problems. So I changed the terms. No guns, no collateral casualties. You want to fight? Fine. But you do it with your hands in controlled spaces, where the only person you hurt is the one you're actually fighting. I stared at him. That's unusual. That's survival. He looked back at me. Violence is easy. Anyone can pull a trigger, but control, restraint, knowing when not to escalate, that's power the Colanas don't have, and it makes me more dangerous than they'll ever be. There was something in his voice, conviction, maybe, or exhaustion. Like he'd fought this battle before and won at a cost I couldn't see. Tomorrow, he continued, we'll run through the arbitration setup. Location, exits, where you'll sit, what to expect. Sunday, we'll do a walkthrough if possible. Get you comfortable with the space. And tonight? Tonight, you rest. Door locks from the inside if you want privacy. Bathroom's stocked. There's clothes in the dresser. They'll be too big, but they're clean. He stood, grabbed his plate. I'll be out here if you need anything. It felt like a dismissal, or maybe permission to stop pretending I was holding it together. I stood, folder in hand, and made it 3 steps toward the hallway before my voice betrayed me. Why are you doing this? Marco paused at the kitchen sink, didn't turn around. Because I put you in danger, he said. And I don't leave people behind. Not when it's my fault they're bleeding. I'm not bleeding. Not yet. He turned then, and the look in his eyes was something I couldn't name. Regret, maybe, or recognition. But you would have been. If I'd left you at that restaurant, if I'd let them take you in that alley, you would have bled. And I've seen enough of that to last 10 lifetimes. I didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to hold the weight of someone else's guilt when I was barely managing my own fear. So I just nodded, took the folder, walked down the hallway to the bedroom he'd given me. The door had a lock. I used it. And then I sat on the edge of the bed, clean sheets, soft comforter, the kind of mattress that didn't have broken springs, and let myself shake. I didn't sleep. Tried. God knows I tried. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Giancarlo's hand reaching for me, heard the crack of bone when I'd hit him with the ladle, felt the weight of Marco's palm against mine as we ran. Around 2 a.m., I gave up, grabbed the folder, and started memorizing faces by the dim light from the street. Giancarlo Colonna, Enzo Colonna, Vincent Colonna. 3 generations of a family business built on leverage and fear. The notes Marco had included were sparse but telling. Giancarlo, direct action, low impulse control. Enzo, negotiator, watch his hands. Vincent, never acts without 3 backup plans. I was on my 4th read-through when I heard movement in the living room. Soft, careful, someone trying not to wake me. I unlocked the door quietly, padded down the hallway in the too big shirt Marco had left me. He was at the kitchen table, hunched over a laptop, the blue light washing his face in shadows. He'd changed into a plain black t-shirt. and I could see the full extent of the scarring on his arms now, not just the knuckles, but a longer one along his left bicep, another disappearing under the sleeve near his shoulder. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking up. "Apparently neither can you." "I don't sleep much." He closed the laptop, rubbed his eyes. 3, maybe 4 hours a night. Old habit. I pulled out the chair across from him, sat. The folder was still in my hand. "I've been studying." "Good." He nodded toward it. "Questions?" "Enzo's notes say, watch his hands. What am I watching for?" "He uses them when he lies. Specific tells, taps his ring finger twice when he's stalling, touches his watch when he's about to redirect." Marco's voice had that teaching quality again, patient but precise. "He thinks he's subtle. He's not." "And Vincent?" "Vincent doesn't have tells. Vincent has contingencies." He leaned back, arms crossed. "Whatever happens Monday, he'll have planned for it, and 2 alternatives. Your job isn't to predict him, it's to hear what he's not saying." "How do I do that?" "You listen to the silence, the pauses, what gets translated and what doesn't." He watched me for a moment. "You've worked service long enough. You know how to read a room, who's really in charge, who's performing, who's scared. This is the same thing. Just higher stakes." He wasn't wrong. 3 years of waitressing had taught me to navigate power dynamics, read body language, know which table would tip and which would snap their fingers for more water. Today, I corrected, glancing at the dark window. "What's the plan?" "We visit the restaurant, talk to Tony." Marco's jaw tightened. "He needs to understand what's coming, and I need to confirm the leak stops before Monday." "You're going to threaten him." "I'm going to offer him a way out." He said it like there was a difference. Tony made bad choices because he had no good options. I'm giving him a good option. What he does with it is up to him. I thought about Tony, his tired eyes, his daughter at NYU, the way he'd tried to protect me even when he was drowning in his own problems. "What's the good option?" He testifies. Controlled environment, recorded statement, immunity guarantee. He tells the mediator exactly how the Kalanas pressured him, and in exchange, his debt gets restructured through a legitimate channel I control. Marco's voice was firm. His daughter stays safe. He keeps the restaurant, but the information flow stops. And if he refuses, then the Kalanas own him until he can't pay anymore, and people who can't pay. He didn't finish, didn't need to. "When do we go?" "Morning. The restaurant doesn't open until 11 on Saturdays. We'll catch him during prep." Marco stood, stretched. I heard something in his back pop, saw him wince. "You should try to sleep, few more hours at least." "What about you?" "I'll sleep when this is over." He picked up his laptop, then paused. "Ava, the folder. Keep it with you tomorrow. If something happens and we get separated, you need to know who to avoid and who to approach." "You think we'll get separated?" "I think I plan for contingencies." That almost smile. Learned it from Vincent. I went back to the bedroom but left the door cracked. Just in case. This time, I slept. Not well, but enough. Janelle's looked different in daylight. Smaller somehow, less dramatic. The chairs were stacked on tables, and the smell of bleach mixed with marinara hung in the air, the ghost of last night's service and this morning's cleaning. Tony was in the kitchen, prepping vegetables with the methodical precision of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. He looked up when we entered, and something in his face crumpled. "Eva." He set down the knife. "I didn't know if they said there was trouble. The Kalanas. I know." I stayed close to Marco, not hiding behind him, but using his presence as a buffer. Marco explained. Tony's gaze flicked to Marco, then back to me. "You're with him now?" "I'm safe," I said, "which is more than I can say for you." Marco moved deeper into the kitchen, hands loose at his sides, posture open, non-threatening but impossible to ignore. "Antonio, we need to talk. I got nothing to say to you, Sant'Angelo." "Marco, and yes, you do." He pulled out a stool, sat, making himself smaller, less imposing. "The Kalanas have been squeezing you for 3 months. Gambling debt, 47,000 last I checked. They offered you a deal. Information for installment payments. Keep them updated on who comes through, what's said, who talks to who." Tony's face went gray. Don't lie." Not now. Marco's voice stayed gentle. Your daughter Isabella, pre-med at NYU. They told you they'd make sure she had problems if you didn't cooperate. So you cooperated. Because what else could you do? Tony's hands shook. He gripped the counter. They said they'd hurt her, my little girl. I couldn't. I know. Marco leaned forward. And I'm not here to punish you for it. I'm here to offer you a way out. There's no way out. You don't understand how these people. I understand exactly how these people work. I've been handling them for 15 years. Marco's voice hardened, just slightly. But they're using you to rig Monday's arbitration. And that ends. Today. Tony looked at me, desperate. Eva, I'm sorry. I never meant for you to get caught up in this. Last night, when you said that name, I knew they'd come for you. And I tried to. I know you did. My throat felt tight. But Marco's right. This has to stop. What's he offering? Tony asked, still looking at me. Like he trusted my read on this more than Marco's words. Testimony, I said. Recorded, protected. You tell the mediator how they pressured you. In exchange, your debt gets restructured. Legitimate terms, no more threats. Isabella stays safe. You keep the restaurant. And if I say no? Marco answered that one. Then I can't protect you, or her. The Colanas will keep squeezing until you break, or until they don't need you anymore. And when that happens, he let the silence finish. Tony closed his eyes. What do you need? A statement, written and verbal. I'll arrange the recording session. Neutral location, lawyer present. You tell the truth, all of it. When the pressure started, what they asked for, what you gave them. Marco's voice softened. And you name names. Giancarlo, Enzo, Vincent. Anyone who touched this. They'll kill me. They'll try. But by the time your statement goes live, they'll have bigger problems than you. Marco stood. The arbitration Monday. It's not just about the contract. It's about breaking their leverage network. You're one piece. Important, but not the only one. Tony looked at me again. You trust him. I thought about the last 12 hours. The way Marco had put himself between me and danger. The scars on his knuckles. The folder full of information he'd given me freely. The way he'd made me eat when I was running on fumes. I trust him to keep his word, I said carefully. And I trust that he's better than the alternative. Tony nodded slowly. Okay. When? Tomorrow. Sunday afternoon. I'll send a car. Marco pulled out a card, plain white, just a phone number. You call this if anything changes. Anything. Someone approaches you. You feel watched. You get scared. You call. Tony took the card like it was made of glass. We left him there, in his kitchen, surrounded by half-prepped vegetables, and the weight of choices he wished he'd never had to make. Outside, the morning sun was bright enough to hurt. That was the easy part, Marco said as we walked. Easy? He wanted a way out. Most people don't. They'd rather drown in familiar water than swim toward an unfamiliar shore. He glanced at me. You hungry? I was. Where are we going? Market. There's something I need to check. And you need to see how they operate in public. The night market was exactly what it sounded like. An open-air sprawl of vendors that started setting up at dusk and ran until dawn. Food, clothes, electronics of questionable legality, produced so fresh it was still covered in field dirt. And information. Stay close, Marco murmured as we entered the maze of stalls. Don't make eye contact unless I do first. If someone approaches you, you're my cousin. From out of town, you don't know anything. Cousin? Easier than explaining the truth. We drifted through the market like we belonged there, Marco with his hands in his pockets, me with the folder tucked in my bag. Both of us watching, and then I saw it. 2 men at a produce stall. One of them, middle-aged, apron stained with tomato, was haggling over the price of peppers. Normal, mundane. Except his hands. While he talked prices, his left hand moved against his leg. 3 taps, a pause, 2 more. The vendor, older, weathered, responded with a slight nod and a brush of his knuckles against his apron. Marco, I whispered. 10 o'clock, the pepper guy. He didn't turn his head, but I felt his attention shift. What do you see? Hand signals, 3 tap, pause, 2 tap. The vendor responded, knuckle brush on the apron. Marco's expression didn't change, but something in his posture tightened. Good eye, keep watching. The haggling continued. Loud, performative. The kind of argument that was more ritual than conflict. But underneath, the hands kept moving. Tap patterns, scarf adjustments, a specific way of setting down coins. They're coordinating something, I said. The timing, maybe? Or locations? Both. Marco's voice was barely audible. 3 taps mean delay, 2 taps mean proceed. The knuckle brush is confirmation. He finally looked at me. How did you catch that? I waitressed for 3 years. You learn to read people, what they say versus what they mean. This is just quieter. Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. Approval, maybe, or recognition that I was more useful than he'd expected. We stayed for another 20 minutes, watching the patterns repeat across different stalls. By the time we left, I'd identified 4 more signal exchanges. They're planning around the arbitration, I said, as we walked back toward the flat. Setting up timing for Monday. If the vote goes the way they want, those signals will trigger something. Delivery schedules, warehouse access. Maybe personnel shifts. Marco's jaw worked. They're building infrastructure before they even have the contract. Confident. Or desperate. Same thing sometimes. Back at the flat, Marco made coffee. Strong, bitter, the kind that could wake the dead. I sat at the kitchen table with the folder, adding notes about the hand signals I'd seen. He moved around the kitchen with that same economical grace, but I caught the way he favored his left side, the slight hitch in his breathing when he reached for the mugs. You're hurt, I said. I'm fine. I stood, walked around the table. You're not. Let me see. Ava. You made me eat. You made me sleep. You took care of me. I stopped in front of him, close enough to see the tension in his jaw. Let me return the favor. For a long moment, he just looked at me, weighing, deciding. Then he sighed and pulled the t-shirt up and off in one smooth motion. Oh, I'd seen the scars on his arms. I wasn't prepared for the full extent of damage mapped across his torso. The bruise from last night was spectacular, deep purple bleeding into black across his left rib cage. But there were others, old scars, layered like sediment. A long one across his right side that looked surgical. Another, puckered and round, low on his abdomen. Bullet wound. My fingers moved before I could think better of it. Traced the edge of the bruise, testing the heat, the swelling. Marco went absolutely still. Sorry, I whispered. Did that hurt? No. His voice had gone rough. It didn't hurt. I looked up. Found him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. His chest rose and fell, each breath carefully controlled. I could see his pulse hammering at the base of his throat, see the tension coiled through his shoulders and arms. He was holding himself in check, barely. You need ice, I managed. And wrapping. I've had worse. That's not the point. I forced myself to step back, to breathe. Stay there. I went to the freezer, found a gel pack, wrapped it in a towel. My hands were shaking. When I came back, he was still standing there, shirtless, watching me with those dark eyes. Sit, I said. He sat. I pressed the ice to his ribs, gentle but firm. He hissed through his teeth, and every muscle in his abdomen tightened. I could see the definition there, the lean strength of someone who'd been fighting his whole life. Focus, Eva. You took this hit for me, I said, trying to ground myself in facts, instead of the heat spreading through my body. I took it because Giancarlo was sloppy and I was faster. His hand came up, covered mine where I held the ice pack, warm, rough-palmed, completely enveloping my smaller hand. That's all. Is it? I didn't pull away. Couldn't. You keep putting yourself between me and danger. That's the job. Stop calling it that. My free hand moved without permission, pressed flat against his chest, right over his heart. I felt it hammering against my palm. This isn't just a job, not anymore. His other hand came up, caught my wrist, not pulling me away, holding me there. Ava. My name was a warning, or a prayer. You don't know what you're asking. I'm not asking anything, I looked at where my hand rested against his chest, felt the heat of his skin burning through me. I'm noticing things. What things? That you look at me like I matter, that you keep me safe even when it costs you. I forced myself to meet his eyes. That you're holding yourself back right now, and I don't know if that's for my sake or yours. His jaw worked. His grip on my wrist tightened fractionally, not painful, but possessive. Both. The honesty of it stole my breath. I made you bait, he continued, voice low and fierce. I put you in danger because I needed to flush a leak. I'm not a good man, Eva. I'm trying to be better than I was, but I'm still the kind of person who uses people, who makes calculations about acceptable losses. And which am I asked. Acceptable loss or something else? His eyes dropped to my mouth, stayed there. You're the thing that breaks my math, he said quietly. The variable I didn't account for, and I don't know what to do with that. My heart was trying to break through my ribs. Marco. He pulled me closer, not rough, but deliberate. Gave me time to resist, to step back, to enforce the boundaries we'd set. I didn't. Instead, I let the ice pack fall forgotten to the floor and brought my other hand up to his face. Traced the scar through his eyebrow with my thumb. Tell me to stop, I whispered. I should. His hand slid from my wrist to my waist, fingers spreading across the small of my back. But I won't. The distance between us evaporated. He kissed me, not soft, not gentle. This was hunger held in check for too long, finally given permission. His mouth was hot and demanding, and when I gasped against him, he deepened the kiss, his other hand coming up to cup the back of my head, angle me exactly where he wanted me. I'd been kissed before, quick fumbles, awkward dates. Nothing that prepared me for this, for the way Marco kissed like he was claiming something, like he'd been thinking about this for longer than I'd realized, like he was still restraining himself, and what I was getting was only a fraction of what he wanted. I gripped his shoulders, felt the muscle and heat under my palms, and kissed him back just as fiercely. Tried to tell him without words that I wanted this, wanted him, despite every logical reason I shouldn't. His hand tightened in my hair, not painful, just possessive, and a sound escaped him. Low, rough, almost a growl. Then he pulled back, not far, just enough to press his forehead against mine, both of us breathing hard. We need to stop, he said. Why? My lips felt swollen. I could still taste him. Because if we don't stop now, I won't be able to. His thumb traced my jaw, my throat, feeling the hammering pulse there. And you deserve better than this, better than me. What if I get to decide what I deserve? He closed his eyes. Ava, I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing is lying to me about what's between us. I pulled back enough to see his face. I feel it too. This, whatever this is. And I'm scared of it, but I'm not going to pretend it doesn't exist. It can't exist. But his hands were still on me, still holding me close. Not while you're in danger because of me. Not while I'm using you to bring down the Kalanas. There's no consent in that. No clean choice. He was right. I hated that he was right. So what do? We finish this. His voice was rough. Monday. We break the Kalanas' leverage. We get you safe, get Tony safe, end this. And then what? He opened his eyes. The heat in them hadn't dimmed. Then you decide. Clear head, no coercion, no danger hanging over you. You decide if I'm something you want. And I'll respect whatever you choose. It was the most decent thing anyone had ever offered me. And it hurt more than I expected. I stepped back. He let me go immediately. Okay, I whispered. Monday, we finish this. Monday, he agreed. But the way he looked at me, like I was something precious and dangerous and utterly out of reach, said he was already dreading my answer. I picked up the fallen ice pack, set it on the counter. You should wrap those ribs. I will. And get some sleep. Eva. Good night, Marco. I walked to the bedroom before I could do something stupid. Like turn around, like ask him to follow. Behind me, I heard him exhale, long, shaky, the sound of a man barely holding himself together. I closed the door, locked it, and pressed my back against it, heart racing, lips still burning from his kiss. Monday felt like a lifetime away. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. I carry it. I should. He took the ice pack from my hand, set it aside. But I decided that day, no more guns, no more collateral. If I'm going to be in this world, I'm going to do it on terms that don't leave bodies behind. That's why you took the hit last night. Why you shield people. That's why I'm still breathing. He stood carefully, testing the ribs. Because the alternative is becoming the thing I'm trying to stop. I watched him move to the sink, watched the way he held himself together through sheer will. Marco, he turned. Thank you, for this, for keeping your word. Something in his expression softened. We're not done yet. Thank me Monday, when you're safe and the Kalanas are defanged. But I saw it, the flicker of something that wasn't about strategy or leverage or mutual benefit. He cared. Not because I was useful, but because he'd decided I mattered. And that, more than anything else in the last 24 hours, scared me. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt Marco's hands on me. One in my hair, one at my waist. The controlled strength in the way he'd held me. The taste of him. The sound he'd made when I'd kissed him back. We finish this. Then you decide. Decent. Impossible. Infuriating. By the time pale morning light crept through the bedroom window, I'd given up on sleep entirely. I showered in the small bathroom, used the soap that smelled like him, tried not to think about the fact that his hands had been on that same bar of soap, and dressed in my own clothes. The jeans and shirt I'd been wearing Friday night, cleaned and folded on the dresser at some point while I'd slept. He'd done that, taken care of it without asking. I found him in the kitchen, already dressed, nursing coffee and staring at his laptop like it had personally offended him. He looked up when I entered. Something flickered in his eyes. Heat, recognition, want, before he locked it down. Morning, he said, carefully neutral. Morning. I poured my own coffee, kept the counter between us. Safe distance. What's the plan? Tony's recording session is at 2. Neutral location, lawyer present, everything documented. He closed the laptop. Before that, we need to do a walkthrough of the arbitration site. Get you familiar with the space, the exits, where you'll be positioned. Is that safe? Going to the actual location? The church basement is neutral territory. Has been for 30 years. Both sides respect that. His mouth tightened. But we'll be careful anyway. We left the flat 20 minutes later, taking side streets I didn't recognize. Marco moved like he always did. Aware of everything, cataloging angles and exit points. His body positioned so he was always between me and potential threats. I watched him do it. Couldn't stop watching him, actually. The way he filled out the dark jacket. The economical grace in how he moved despite the bruised ribs. The way he'd glance back at me every few steps, just checking, making sure I was there. You're staring, he said without turning around. You're worth staring at. He stopped, turned. The look he gave me was pure heat tempered by restraint. Eva. I'm just being honest. I met his gaze. You said we'd finish this first. You didn't say I had to pretend nothing happened. His jaw worked. No, I didn't. We walked the rest of the way in charged silence. The church was older than the neighborhood, stone and stained glass. The kind of building that had survived decades of gentrification by sheer stubbornness. Marco led me around to a side entrance, down worn stairs into a basement that smelled like old wood and candle wax. The arbitration room was set up like a classroom, long table at the front, rows of chairs facing it, windows set high in the walls, letting in filtered daylight. Mediator sits here, Marco gestured to the center of the front table. The union reps on the left, the Kalanas and their proxy on the right. You'll sit here. He pointed to a chair in the second row, slightly to the side. Close enough to hear everything, far enough back that you're not obviously part of my team. I walked to the chair, sat, tested the sightlines. I can see both sides clearly, here without being obvious. Exactly. He moved to the front of the room, positioned himself where the Kalanas would sit. When they talk in Italian, in dialect, I need you to catch every word, not just the obvious translation, the subtext, the signals, what they're coordinating under the conversation. Like at the market. Exactly like the market. He came back toward me, and I was suddenly very aware that we were alone in a basement. In a church, with nothing but confession and want hanging between us. He stopped in front of my chair, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to see his face. This works, I said. My voice came out softer than intended. The positioning, I can do this. I know you can. He reached out, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was brief, almost chaste, but it sent electricity down my spine. "You're good at this, Eva. Better than you know." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "Of Monday, of the Colonas, of what happens after." "After?" "When I have to decide." I stood, and suddenly we were inches apart. "You asked me to choose. Clear head, no coercion." "But how am I supposed to have a clear head when I can still feel your hands on me? When I look at you and remember exactly how you taste?" His breath caught. "Eva, I'm not asking you to break your word. I'm not asking you to touch me until this is over." I held his gaze. "But I need you to know, I've already started deciding, and you should prepare yourself for what my answer might be." The air between us crackled. "What answer?" His voice was rough, dangerous. "That I want this, want you, even though you used me as bait. Even though you're dangerous and I'm barely holding my life together." I lifted my chin. "Even though every smart instinct I have says I should run." He moved before I could breathe, backed me against the wall beside the chair, hands braced on either side of my head, his body a line of heat I wasn't quite touching. "You're killing me," he said quietly, intensely. "Do you understand that? I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm trying to give you space to choose freely. And you're standing here telling me that I choose you." I put my hand on his chest, felt his heart hammering. "I'm telling you that when this is over, when Monday is done and I'm safe and the Colonas are handled, I'm going to choose you. So you'd better be ready for that." He closed his eyes, exhaled hard. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying I see you. The scars, the guilt, the way you're trying to be better than what you were. I'm saying that when you kissed me last night, I felt more alive than I have in years." My hand fisted in his shirt. "I'm saying that I trust you with my life, Marco. And I'm starting to trust you with more than that." His forehead dropped to mine. We stayed like that, not kissing, just breathing the same air, the tension between us thick enough to drown in. "Monday," he whispered. "We do this Monday, together." "Together," I agreed. "And then?" "And then you're mine." I said it like a fact, like I'd already decided and the universe just needed to catch up. "If you want to be," he laughed, a rough, breathless sound. "If I want to be, God, Ava. I've wanted since the moment you fired back at me in Sicilian. Since you hit Enzo with a ladle and didn't hesitate. Since you looked at me like I was more than the worst things I've done." "You are more." "I'm trying to be." He pulled back enough to see my face. "But I need you to understand this life. What I do, it's not clean. It's not safe. Even without guns, even with all my rules, people get hurt, and I can't promise." "I'm not asking for promises." I cut him off. "I'm asking for honesty. For you to keep being the man who won't touch me until I can choose freely. Who takes hits meant for me. Who looks at me like like you're everything." He said it simply. "Because you're starting to be." The confession hung between us, raw and honest. Then his phone buzzed. The sound shattered the moment like glass. He stepped back, pulled it out, checked the screen. His expression shifted, went professional, guarded. "Tony, he's on his way to the recording session." Reality crashed back in. Right. We had work to do, leverage to build, a war to win. "We should go," I said. "Yeah," but he didn't move, just stood there, looking at me like he was memorizing the moment. "Eva, after Monday, I'm going to do this properly, take you to dinner, somewhere nice. Somewhere that's not a safe house or a church basement or running from people who want to hurt you." Something warm bloomed in my chest. "You're asking me on a date. I'm telling you I'm going to court you." The corner of his mouth lifted. "The right way, because you deserve that. You deserve everything." I kissed him, quick, decisive, pressed up on my toes and caught his mouth with mine before he could react. Just a moment, just enough to taste him again, to feel the sharp inhale against my lips. When I pulled back, his eyes were dark and hot. "That's a yes," I said. "To dinner, to proper courting, to whatever comes after Monday." "Noted." His voice had gone gravelly. "Now we really need to go before I forget every good intention I have and finish what we started." We left the church basement, climbed back into daylight, started walking toward the recording session, but something had shifted. settled into place. We were a unit now, partners. Whatever came Monday, we'd face it together. And after, I was going to let myself fall completely. Tony's recording session went smoothly. Too smoothly, maybe. He sat in a small office in a lawyer's building I didn't recognize, and he told the truth. All of it. When the Colanas had first approached him. The exact amount he owed. The threats against Isabella, the information he'd passed. Schedules, faces, conversations overheard. He named names: Giancarlo, Enzo, Vincent. The lawyer, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, recorded every word, took notes, asked clarifying questions. By the end, Tony looked 10 years older and 20 pounds lighter. "This is good," Marco said as we left. "Solid evidence. When we introduce it Monday, the Colanas won't be able to spin their way out." "What happens to Tony?" I asked. "He's done his part. The debt gets restructured through my channels, legitimate loan, manageable payments. Isabella stays at NYU. He keeps the restaurant." Marco's voice was firm. "He'll be fine." I wanted to believe him. We grabbed food from a corner deli, sandwiches we ate while walking, because Marco didn't like staying in one place too long. The afternoon sun was bright, almost warm. For a few minutes, it almost felt normal. Like we were just two people on a date, navigating the city, instead of two people preparing for war. Back at the flat, Marco pulled out more files. Background on the mediator, the union reps, the legal framework for the arbitration. I absorbed it all, asked questions, made notes in margins. We worked side by side at the kitchen table. Sometimes our hands would brush, reaching for the same document, passing notes, and every time it happened, the air would thicken. We'd pause, make eye contact. Remember everything we weren't letting ourselves do yet. It was torture, beautiful, necessary torture. By evening, I was exhausted, not physically, but mentally. Too much information, too much emotion, too much Marco in close proximity, without being able to touch him the way I wanted. "I need air," I said, standing. "Just 5 minutes. Clear my head." "Balcony's through there." He pointed to a door off the living room I hadn't noticed. "I'll make dinner." The balcony was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people, but it overlooked the neighborhood in a way that made the city feel both huge and intimate. I leaned against the railing, let the cooling air wash over me, and tried to organize my thoughts. Tomorrow was Monday. The arbitration, the endgame. And then, the door opened behind me. Marco stepped out, 2 mugs in hand. "Tea. Thought you might want something that wasn't coffee." "Thanks." I took the mug, wrapped my hands around it. "You didn't have to, I wanted to." He leaned against the railing beside me, close but not touching. "You okay?" "Nervous, excited, terrified." I laughed. All of it at once. That's normal. Before something big, your body floods with adrenaline, makes everything feel sharper. "Is that what this is? Adrenaline?" He looked at me, knew exactly what I was asking. "No," he said quietly. "This isn't adrenaline." My breath caught. "Marco." His phone rang. He pulled it out, checked the screen, and his entire body went rigid. "I need to take this." He stepped back inside. I heard his voice, terse, controlled, but couldn't make out words. When he came back out, his expression was locked down tight. "What's wrong?" That was my contact in the Colana organization, someone I've had embedded for months. Feeding information. He set his phone down with careful control. "Ava, there's something I need to tell you, and you're not going to like it." My stomach dropped. "What?" "The insult. Friday night, in the restaurant." He met my eyes. It wasn't just bait to flush the leak. It was specific bait. Designed to make you react. Because I needed the Colanas to see you react. To mark you as connected. As someone worth investigating. You made me a target on purpose?" "Yes." No apology in his voice, just flat honesty. "I needed them focused on you so they wouldn't notice what else I was doing. You were the distraction while I positioned other pieces." I stepped back. "You used me." "I told you I did. Friday night in the alley, I told you I used you to confirm the leak. You said you baited the room. You didn't say you specifically baited me. You didn't say you turned me into bait for predators." My voice was rising. I didn't care. "You made me visible to people who hurt people for sport. And you did it knowing exactly what would happen. I did it knowing I could keep you safe. His voice was still controlled, still calm, and that made it worse. I calculated the risk. I decided it was acceptable. You decided, not me. You decided I was acceptable collateral for your plan. You weren't collateral, you were— He stopped, regrouped. I knew I could protect you. I knew I'd get you out. Every step was calculated to minimize your risk while maximizing your leverage. I laughed, bitter. God, you really are good at this. You made me trust you, made me think. I couldn't finish, couldn't say what I'd started to think this was. Eva, listen to me. No. You listen. I set the mug down before I threw it. I trusted you. I chose you. I stood in that church and told you I was going to choose you. And the whole time you were hiding this, that you deliberately put me in danger for your strategy. I was protecting you. By making me a target? By keeping you close. His control cracked. Yes, I used the insult to mark you. Yes, I knew the Kalanas would investigate. But I also knew that once they were focused on you, I could control the narrative. I could keep you in my sight, under my protection, exactly where I needed you to be to finish this. So I was what? A chess piece? You were— He stopped. Something in his expression shifted. You were never just a chess piece. But I was a chess piece. I felt something breaking in my chest. Among other things. And you didn't think I deserved to know that before we— I couldn't say it. Couldn't admit how close I'd come to falling. There's more, he said quietly. More? The leak. Tony. Marco's jaw was tight. He started cooperating with the Kalanas 3 months ago. But 6 months ago, around the time you were picking up extra work to cover Mateo's school expenses, do you remember taking a temp gig? Weekend data entry, processing invoices, and vendor contracts. My blood went cold. That was one weekend. Maybe 8 hours total. The agency said it was for a restaurant supply company. It was a front, connected to the Kalana's lawyer. The paperwork you processed, invoices, shipping schedules, supplier information for restaurants and businesses in this neighborhood, gave them access to logistics patterns, delivery schedules, vendor relationships, intelligence they used to plan their contract takeover. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to map the territory. No, I said it louder. I processed papers for 8 hours. I didn't know. I was just trying to make an extra $200 so Mateo could go on his class trip. I know. It was innocent. You had no way of knowing who you were actually working for or what the information would be used for. His voice was gentle. Too gentle. But the Kalanas know. They figured it out last week when you used my name at the restaurant. They connected you to that weekend temp job, realized you'd handled their intelligence gathering, however unwittingly, and that you've been working in the neighborhood for 3 years, which means you might have seen or heard things that could expose their network. The temp service was a front, connected to the Kalana's lawyer. The paperwork she processed gave them access to shipping schedules, supplier information. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to— No, I said it louder. You can't be saying, Eva. He said my name like an apology. You were that temp, 6 months ago, before you knew any of this existed. The world tilted. I processed papers. I didn't know. I know, it was innocent. You had no way of knowing who you were actually working for. His voice was gentle, too gentle. But the Kalanas know. They figured it out last week when you used my name at the restaurant. They connected you to the paperwork, realized you had access, however unwitting, to information they could leverage. So I'm not just bait. My voice sounded distant. I'm already compromised. Already inside their network. You were never inside their network. You were used briefly without your knowledge. But yes, they think you're an asset they can leverage. He took a step toward me. That's why I needed you close. Not just for the arbitration. To keep you safe from what they'd do if they got to you first. I backed away. Hit the railing. You knew, this whole time. You knew I'd touched their operation and you didn't tell me. I was protecting you. Stop saying that, my voice cracked. You keep saying you're protecting me, but what you're really doing is controlling me, managing me, using me as a tool in your war with them. And I'm so stupid I actually believed. Believed what? That you saw me. Tears were burning behind my eyes. I refused to let them fall. That when you looked at me, you saw Eva, not an asset, not a convenient interpreter, not a pawn who could be maneuvered into position. I do see you, he looked wrecked. Eva, I see you. I saw you from the first moment, and that's the problem. I saw how much you mattered, and I still made the calculation that using you was worth the risk. Because the alternative was letting the Kalanas win, and I can't let them win. Even if it means sacrificing me, I was never going to sacrifice you. I swear to God, every move I've made has been to keep you alive and safe and under your control. I pushed past him, back into the flat, started grabbing my things, my bag, my phone, the folder with my notes. Where are you going? Away from you. I shoved the folder in my bag. Away from this. I'll show up Monday because people are counting on me, and I'm not going to let Tony or anyone else get hurt because I bailed. But after that, we're done. No dinner, no courting, no us. Eva, please. He reached for me. I jerked back. Don't touch me. Don't. My voice broke. You made me bait. You knew I'd been inside their operation and you didn't tell me. You let me think I was choosing you freely when the whole time you were managing variables. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I demanded. Explain to me how any of this was honest. How any of what happened between us was real when it was all built on you hiding the truth. He opened his mouth, closed it, and for the first time since I'd met him, Marco Sant'Angelo had no answer. That's what I thought. I headed for the door. You can't go home. They know where you live. Then I'll go somewhere else. Matteo's friend's place. A hotel. Anywhere that isn't here with you. Ava. His voice was raw now, desperate. I'm sorry. I should have told you. I should have been honest from the start. But I swear on everything. I never meant to hurt you. I stopped at the door, didn't turn around. But you did, I said quietly. You hurt me anyway. And I left. Act 3, Rally and Resolution. I lasted 4 hours at Matteo's friend's apartment before guilt ate me alive. Not guilt about leaving Marco, he'd earned that. But guilt about what came Monday. About Tony, whose recorded confession was sitting in some lawyer's office, waiting to be deployed. About the arbitration, and the people caught in the Kalanas web who needed someone to hear what was really being said. I'd made a promise. I keep my promises, even when it cost me. Around midnight, I pulled out the folder, studied the photos again, Giancarlo, Enzo, Vincent, reviewed my notes on the hand signals, the dialect patterns, the subtext Marco had taught me to listen for, and I saw something I'd missed before. The hand signals from the market. 3 taps for delay, 2 taps for proceed, knuckle brush for confirmation. Simple, functional. But there was a pattern underneath the pattern. The timing mattered. A 3-tap followed immediately by 2-tap meant something different than the same signals separated by conversation. And the position of the knuckle brush, high on the apron versus low, that changed meaning too. They weren't just coordinating. They were having entire conversations in plain sight. And if I could decode it, if I could map the full system, I could give Marco something more valuable than just translation. I could give him their entire playbook. I grabbed my phone, stared at Marco's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. He used you. He made you bait. He knew you'd touch their operation and hid it from you. All true, but also true. He'd kept me alive, taken hits meant for me, kissed me like I was air and he was drowning. And he'd tried, however imperfectly, to give me the choice he thought I deserved. I texted instead. I found something in the hand signals. Full pattern system. They're more complex than we thought. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, can I call you? No. But I'll be at the arbitration tomorrow. We finish this. Then I decide if we're done. Long pause. Then, okay, thank you. Another pause. I'm sorry for all of it. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. I didn't respond. Just set the phone down and went back to studying the patterns until my eyes burned and the sun started creeping through the windows. Monday came too fast. I dressed carefully, professional but not formal. The kind of outfit that let me blend into the background of a church basement arbitration. Marco had returned my cleaned clothes Saturday. I'd left them at his flat, so I made do with what I had. Matteo caught me at the door. You okay? You look tired. I'm tired. I forced a smile. Big day. That thing I told you about, the arbitration for work. You're just observing, right? Not, like, involved? If only. Right, just observing. He hugged me, quick, brotherly. Be careful. Always am. The lie tasted bitter. The church basement looked different, filled with people. The mediator, a gray-haired man with the kind of face that had seen everything twice, sat at the center of the front table. Union reps on the left, 3 of them, looking nervous and determined. On the right, the Colanas. Vincent sat in the center, silver-haired and grandfather calm. Giancarlo to his left, still carrying a slight limp from Friday's fight. Enzo to his right, already scanning the room, cataloging faces. His eyes landed on me, held. I didn't look away. Marco entered last, and the temperature in the room shifted. He wore a suit today, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, the kind that said power without shouting it. He caught my eye across the room, and I saw the question there. Are we okay? Can we do this? I gave him a single nod. His shoulders dropped fractionally. Relief. The arbitration began. English first, formalities, procedural explanations, opening statements from both sides. The union wanted fair process. The Colanas wanted the contract. Everything polite, everything legal. Then the mediator opened the floor for questions, and the real negotiation started. Enzo spoke first, smooth, professional Italian. We're concerned about timeline feasibility. The union's proposed schedule seems ambitious. The mediator's translator, a bored-looking man in his 30s, translated mechanically. But I heard what Enzo actually said. The emphasis on ambitious. The slight pause before schedule. Code. He was asking if their inside contact had confirmed the timeline. Vincent responded in Sicilian, casual, almost lazy. These things take time. Patience yields better fruit. Translation. Wait for my signal. Don't rush the play. I made a note. Kept my expression neutral. Beside Vincent, Giancarlo shifted. His hand moved, 3 taps against his thigh. Quick, almost invisible. Vincent's hand came up to adjust his tie. 2 taps against the knot. Delay, proceed. But the order mattered. Giancarlo asked for delay. Vincent countered with proceed. There was tension in the Colonna camp. Disagreement. Marco saw it too. I caught his eye, tapped my pen twice against my notepad. Our agreed signal, I'm seeing something. He gave the slightest nod. The arbitration continued. More questions, more procedural dance. But underneath, the Colanas were having a separate conversation entirely. Enzo. We've prepared alternative proposals. We have backup plans. Which one are we using? Vincent. All options remain available. All plans are still active. I'll choose based on how this unfolds. Giancarlo. Hand signal, knuckle brush, high position. Ready to escalate if needed. Vincent. No immediate response, letting the question hang. The union reps answered questions about capacity, resources, workforce availability. Solid answers, professional. Then the mediator said, I understand there's been concern about information security, allegations of improper disclosure. The room went still. Marco stood. If I may address that, the mediator gestured permission. We have evidence, Marco said calmly, that one of the parties present attempted to gain unfair advantage through coercion and intimidation of a neutral third party. Vincent's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. It is, which is why we have recorded testimony and documentation. Marco nodded to the mediator. With your permission, the mediator considered. Proceed. Marco produced a tablet. Set it on the table where everyone could see. Pressed play. Tony's voice filled the room. They approached me 3 months ago, said I owed money, gambling debt from a bookie I didn't even know was connected to them. 47,000. They said if I didn't cooperate, my daughter. Vincent's face remained placid, but his hand moved, flat against the table. Once, twice. Abort. Shut it down. Enzo's jaw tightened. Giancarlo started to stand. Sit. Vincent's voice was quiet. Enzo translated, unnecessary since Giancarlo clearly understood. But the performance mattered. Tony's testimony continued. Names, dates, specific threats. By the end, the mediator's expression had gone from neutral to grimly focused. "This is quite serious," he said. "It's fabricated." Enzo's voice was smooth, but I heard the strain underneath. A disgruntled employee with debts, trying to shift blame. "It's corroborated," Marco interrupted. "We have bank records showing unusual payments, witness statements from other business owners who were approached similarly, and—" he looked directly at Vincent. "We have someone who can verify the coordination methods used, the signals, the codes." Vincent's eyes narrowed fractionally. That's when I understood. Marco wasn't just presenting evidence. He was telling Vincent, "We know your language, we can hear you." The power dynamic shifted. "Perhaps," Vincent said slowly, in English now, "we should take a recess. Allow time for all parties to review this new information." "No." The word came out of my mouth before I could think better of it. Every head turned toward me. "I'm sorry," I said, standing, "but I have something to add." Marco's eyes went wide. "What are you doing?" I walked to the front of the room, pulled out my notes. "My name is Eva Russo. 6 months ago, I worked as a temp for a service that placed me at Ginelli's restaurant. I processed paperwork, invoices, vendor contracts, shipping schedules. I didn't know at the time, but that temp service was connected to the Colonna's legal network. The information I processed was used to gain advantage in this very contract negotiation." Vincent's expression finally cracked. Just slightly, surprise maybe, or reassessment. "I didn't know what I was doing," I continued. "But you did. You used an unwitting temp worker to gain access to proprietary information. And when that same temp worker accidentally exposed your network last Friday," I looked at Giancarlo. "You tried to intimidate her into silence." "This is hearsay," Enzo said sharply. "No, this is testimony. And I'm willing to provide it under oath." I set my notes on the table. "But more than that, I can prove coordination." I turned to the mediator. "They're using hand signals. Right now, in this room, they've been having an entire conversation separate from what's being translated. I can decode it for you." Dead silence. Then Vincent laughed. Actually laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "Interesting. And you think this, a waitress who worked as a temp, can prove systemic coordination?" "I don't think. I know." I pulled out my phone. Showed the photos I'd taken at the market. Time-stamped, clearly showing the signal exchanges. 3 taps means delay. 2 taps means proceed. Knuckle brush high means ready to escalate. Knuckle brush low means stand down. And the timing between signals changes meaning. Immediate sequence means urgent. Separated by conversation means when ready. I looked at Giancarlo. "You've tapped 3 times twice since this arbitration started. Asking your uncle to delay, to reconsider. He's countered with proceed. You disagree with his strategy. You think he's exposed, and you want to cut losses." Giancarlo's face went red. "You—" He started to stand, and Marco moved, just a shift in position, but suddenly he was between me and the Colonna enforcer. "Sit down," Marco said quietly. For a moment, I thought it would go violent. Thought Giancarlo would charge, and Marco would have to fight him here, in a church basement, in front of witnesses. Instead, Vincent put a hand on his nephew's arm. "Sit." Giancarlo sat. Vincent looked at me with something that might have been respect. "You're well informed for a waitress." "I'm observant. Comes with the job." I held his gaze. "And I'm done being used. By you, by anyone." That last part, I aimed at Marco. He flinched. Vincent leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers. "Mediator, I believe we should recess. Clearly there are complications that require private discussion." "No recess," the mediator said firmly. "Ms. Russo has provided testimony that, if accurate, suggests serious impropriety. Mr. Sant'Angelo has provided recorded evidence of coercion. This arbitration will continue. But the contract proposal from the Colonna proxy is withdrawn from consideration pending investigation." "You can't," Enzo started. "I can, and I am." The mediator's voice was steel. "This proceeding is concluded. The union's proposal will move forward. Any objections can be filed through proper legal channels, which I strongly suggest you use rather than alternative methods." The threat was clear. Vincent stood slowly, adjusted his jacket, looked at Marco. "This isn't over." "Yes," Marco said quietly. "It is. The leak is closed. The contract is clean. And if you come after anyone involved in this process, Tony, Eva, any of the union reps, you'll answer to me, and I won't be polite about it. You don't carry guns anymore, Sant'Angelo. Everyone knows it. I don't need guns. Marco's voice was flat. Certain. I have leverage, information, alliances you don't want tested, and a very long memory. Come after mine, and I'll dismantle your network piece by piece. Legally, publicly, slowly. The two men stared at each other. Then Vincent smiled, cold, calculating. Perhaps another time then. He gestured to Enzo and Giancarlo. They left together, moving like predators who'd lost a hunt but weren't done stalking. The mediator exhaled hard. Well, that was significantly more dramatic than usual. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright. I stood on the church steps, shaking, adrenaline crash, hitting hard now that it was over. Marco emerged a few minutes later, having stayed to finalize paperwork with the mediator. He stopped a careful distance away. That was incredibly brave, and incredibly stupid. I know. You exposed yourself. Put a target. I already had a target. I turned to face him. From the moment you used me as bait. The only difference is now I controlled the narrative instead of letting you control it for me. He absorbed that, nodded. You're right. I know I am. Eva. He took a step closer, stopped. What you did in there, decoding the signals, providing testimony, forcing the Colanas to show their hand. You were extraordinary. Don't, my voice cracked. Don't compliment me like that's going to fix what you broke. I'm not trying to fix it, He ran a hand through his hair. I'm trying to tell you that I see what you did, that it mattered, that you matter. I know I matter, I wrapped my arms around myself. I've always mattered. The question is whether you can see me as more than a tool, more than leverage, more than someone to be managed and positioned. I see you, he said roughly. Eva, I see you. Your spine, your fire, the way you don't back down even when you should. The way you make me want to be. He stopped, started again. I was wrong, about all of it. I should have told you everything from the start. Should have given you the choice, the real choice, before I ever pulled you into this. Yes, you should have. I can't undo it. Can't go back and be the man who made better choices. His voice was raw. But I can promise, I will never lie to you again. Never hide information. Never make decisions about your safety, your life, without including you in that choice. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. How do I trust that? I asked quietly. How do I trust you won't calculate me into your equations again? You don't. Not yet. He took another step closer. But I'm asking you to let me earn it. Let me prove that I can be the man you deserve, not the one who uses people as pieces. The one who sees you and chooses you and respects you enough to let you choose him back. My chest hurt. Marco, I love you. He said it simply, like fact. I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you fired back at me in Sicilian. Maybe when you hit Enzo with a ladle. Maybe when you decoded those signals because you're brilliant and I'm an idiot who almost lost you. He closed the distance between us. But I love you, and I'm asking, begging, for a chance to prove it. Tears were burning hot behind my eyes. You broke my trust. I know. You made me bait. I know. You looked at me and saw a strategy before you saw a person. I know, his voice broke. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. But Eva, I see you now, only you. And if you walk away, I'll respect it. But I'm asking you to stay. To let me spend however long it takes showing you that I'm worth the risk. I looked at him, really looked. Saw the exhaustion in his face, the bruise on his ribs that hadn't healed. The way his hands hung at his sides like he was forcing himself not to reach for me. Saw the man who'd taken hits meant for me. Who'd built a world without guns because he was tired of funerals. Who'd kissed me like I was oxygen and tried, however imperfectly, to do the right thing. I can't promise I forgive you, I said finally. Not yet. His face fell, but I continued. I'm willing to let you try to earn it. Hope flared in his eyes. Yeah? Yeah, I stepped closer. On my terms, with honesty, with choices. With you actually seeing me as a partner, not a... He kissed me, pulled me in and kissed me like he'd been drowning, and I was air, like the last 4 days had been agony, like he'd thought he'd lost me and couldn't quite believe I was real. I kissed him back just as fiercely, let myself fall into it, the heat, the want, the terrifying certainty that this man was going to break my heart or heal it, and I didn't know which yet. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "Dinner," he said. "Somewhere nice, tomorrow." "Okay." And then breakfast, and lunch, and every meal until you're sick of me. "That might take a while." "Good," his thumb traced my jaw. "Because I'm planning on forever, Eva. If you'll let me. Forever." The word hung between us, promise and threat and hope all at once. "Ask me again," I whispered. "After you've earned back my trust. After you've proven you see me. Ask me then." "I will." He kissed me again, softer this time, tender. "Every day, until you say yes." We stood there on the church steps, holding each other while the city moved around us and the sun tracked west, and the war we'd fought settled into something that might, eventually, look like peace. It wasn't a happy ending, not yet, but it was a beginning. 3 months later, the ADA opened an inquiry, and Marco's counsel lodged a preservation notice. Vincent pivoted quiet. Too many eyes on him to make noise. Tony's restaurant had a new sign, fresh paint, proper lighting. The gambling debt was settled. Isabella stayed at NYU. Tony hired actual help instead of working his staff into the ground. I kept my apartment. Matteo's scholarship got renewed. And I started consulting, translation work, cultural liaison, the kind of legitimate business that let me use my skills without getting caught in crossfire. Marco kept his word. Every decision he asked me, every risk he explained, every choice he gave me room to walk away. I didn't walk away. Instead, I walked toward him, slowly, carefully, learning the shape of him beyond the strategy and the scars. The man who made terrible coffee, who read histories of labor movements for fun, who taught me defensive holds in his living room and never once made me feel weak for needing to learn them. The man who loved me like I was the best decision he'd ever made, even when I was still deciding if he was mine. Dinner became breakfast. Breakfast became weekends. Weekends became a key to his place that I actually used. And one night, 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days after the arbitration, he asked me again. We were on his balcony, the city spread out below us, his arms around me from behind, and he said quietly, "I'm going to ask you something, and you can say no, you can say not yet, you can say anything, and I'll respect it. Okay. Will you let me love you, officially, publicly, the kind of love that comes with labels and commitment, and me telling the world you're mine and I'm yours?" I turned in his arms, looked up at him, this man who'd broken my trust, and then spent months rebuilding it brick by careful brick. "Yes," I said. His smile could have lit the city. "Yeah? Yeah." I pulled him down, kissed him slow and deep. "You earned it. I'm going to keep earning it." His hands tightened on my waist. "Every day. For the rest of our lives." "Good," I whispered against his mouth. "Because I'm planning on forever too." And in the warm dark, with the city breathing around us and our history tucked between heartbeats, we chose each other, again, and again, and again.